Welcome to Go Get Great, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious small business owners. I'm your host, Brittany, owner of Brittany Miller Socials and mother of 3. Go Get Great is all about helping you make life and business work together. You'll learn about the fumbles that helped get me and my guests to where we are today so you don't have to make them. So come join the journey with Go Get Great. So today is a good morning. I'm very excited to be talking about self-care and mental health for entrepreneurs and the career ambitious with Dr. Aprile Andelle. So Dr. Aprile Andelle is a Black woman and licensed psychotherapist with over 11 years and 10,000 plus hours. That is a lot, by the way, of deep dive healing work with the amazing clients all around the world. She's the creator of the Every April, a psychological spring cleaning course for women, and is also the host of her own Apple-rated podcast, Do I Need Therapy? Popular topic, I'm sure, where she talks openly, loudly, and proudly about mental health, love, and life, as well as the process of therapy and the strengths found in asking for help. She's really passionate about serving women and women of color and empowering them to develop the skills required for long-lasting positive mental health. Dr. Andelle provides virtual therapy as well as mental wellness support through her mental health masterclass and meditations. And she's based in Miami, so much sunnier than Canada right now. But she travels the world for self-care, community, and connections, and she's looking for her forever home. She's recently been in African city, the town of Cape Cod, Nairobi. Did I get that right?
Cape Town in South Africa.
Cape Town,
Yeah.
Nairobi, and Dakar. And in her spare time, she nurtures her plant babies to bloom, is obsessed with therapy memes on Instagram, and takes long road trips just to binge Afrobeat podcasts and clubhouse conversations. So it is such a pleasure to have you here this morning. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it.
That is a very impressive bio, might I say. And I want to just, point out that you're the first doctor I've had on my podcast. So thank you so much for
Oh, hey.
being here.
Oh,
I'm
that
really,
is fun.
it is, yeah. So I'm really curious what your educational path looked like to become, a doctor and a psychotherapist, and where kind of that passion came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a very large reason why I know I have over 10,000 hours is because so much of that is required in the training to be a therapist. But I actually started out in international business and I
Oh,
minored in internet, Latin American and Caribbean affairs and
mhm.
Spanish. So I started to realize a lot later that I just loved people and culture. I connected it later, and then I have the business skills, so that kind of just worked out anyway.
Yes.
But then, yeah, then a lot of things happened in the economy, in the world, and life, and I ended up switching careers. I was previously working in media and entertainment, right when like social entrepreneurship was hitting the
Hmm.
waves, and I was actually at MTV, working in
Oh,
different channels, and suddenly just everything blew up. So from that point, I knew my strengths and pins, but I didn't know what I was going to do next. And it was it was a rough period, really challenging. And it reminded me of things when I was younger, how difficult there were quite a few things that were going on, but mainly it was just tough because my mother, she's a working mother. And then I had to kind of grow up really fast, many, many times. So between the knowing of my strengths and remembering how challenging it was when I was growing up, just being on my own, because I'm also an only child. I just
ah,
wanted to, I wanted to hopefully allow that nobody else feels that way. If I can prevent even one person, from feeling like they're not alone, they're alone or not able to talk to anyone.
mhm.
If I could prevent even just one person to not feel alone or like they have no one to talk to, that's why I'll do this. So I found a school. It's in Florida, sunny Florida. So that's why I'm based in Miami. It was very helpful. And I went through 2 years with my master's degree. And we started doing trainings with families and individuals. And I was
Mm.
highly supervised, had my supervisor, then another team, and we were like intense with getting started. So that was 2 years of a lot of direct client contact hours, even as a beginner, but your supervisor and your team help you course correct to work
Mhm.
really well with clients. And then after that, you have another several years to reach your doctorate. But a lot of people can just go with
Oh.
their master's. Yeah. So the whole process of courses. Oh, and I forgot to mention internships. And then you have client contact hours inside of school. And then you have internships outside of school. And then when you graduate with your master's, you need more hours to be certified and licensed with the state. So
Huh.
it's a very interesting field and profession
Mhm.
simply because it teaches you so strongly because of even just what it requires, because
Mhm.
you are interacting with the public health essentially. So everything is really high standard so that there's absolutely no harm to anyone, do no harm. And after about 7 years, this was my master's and my doctorate with all those little so many things in between, and you still had to work and you know survive college life and university life. I finally graduated with my doctorate, and it was just glorious being able to be at that point.
I
Glorious. So
imagine.
yeah, the
This
hard
is
work
not
was
a, I was gonna say, this
fun.
is not a degree for the faint of heart. That does not sound like an easy time.
That is so correct. And that actually reminds me, because half the time when we're in therapy, I call it therapy school, but it's university,
Mhm.
Um, half of the time when you're going through that training and you're starting to recognize and learn and be trained on the diagnoses, you
Mhm.
end up thinking like you have half of the book of diagnoses when you're like studying it. It's like, I have that. Oh my God, I have that too. And your friends are like, ooh, and then it's crazy, really funny. So you have a lot of self-discovery
Mm.
inside of the training and education first. And I like to say it kind of breaks you down and builds you back up even stronger. I'm really proud of the person I am. I have a friend, she went through a divorce. And then when she came out as a doctor, she was married to the love of her life. They're still together, but it was because she saw many different things inside of her previous relationship that weren't working. So we go
Mm.
through these actual life transitions and cycles actually with school, with our
Mhm.
colleagues, and then supporting it with a little bit more real life experience with our clients. It's
Mhm.
outstanding. And you're right, it's not for the faint of heart, but it is worth it, and I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful field to be in.
I was gonna say it sounds very impactful, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've talked on a few different podcasts that I've had about all the topics we wish they talked about in school, and I feel like there are probably
Yes.
certain elements of the program that you studied that would be really helpful for, us non-therapy school kids to like learn and have some of those self-discovery moments.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I think so too. I actually also would extend that and say I think there's a lot of things that we should be learning from like primary school,
Mm.
that should be a part of actual schooling, let alone, going to university for being a therapist. But, just basic things like how to make friends, etiquette, how to manage anxiety, how to deal when you get angry or emotional, how to
Mhm.
take care of friends, and how to be respectful to family. It's a lot of things, a lot of things. But inside of therapy school, we have courses like sex education, sex
Hmm.
therapy. Absolutely, we have to study it. So that's actually pretty fun. And a lot of it helps enforce how we do couples work, but you
Mhm.
get all the fun stuff too. So
Nice.
yeah, it's a lot of
I'm like,
really good things.
I'm
Hmm.
very intrigued. And like, we won't talk about this a lot, but can you elaborate a little bit more about what you do in sex therapy?
Sure, I sure can. Uh, a lot of times, couples will come to me or to a therapist with intimacy issues. There's something that's not connecting, something that's not working quite right in the bedroom, right? And a lot of times we're starting to realize that it actually starts before the bedroom. And that's kind of a lot that you work out with and in regular like couples therapy. But inside of like when you're honing down on sex therapy, there's usually something in that intimacy that is challenging. So it could be as far as dealing with a partner who's had a previous um, previously was assaulted sexually. They have to figure
Mhm.
out how to get over that and be with their partner, be present and enjoy it. Somebody could experience the difficulty of having sex and it's actually a physical challenge, pain or discomfort, something medically challenging. And so you're working with them on figuring out the fact that, a lot of times it is possible. It's just like experimentation and being open and okay with that. And
Mhm.
then there's also the other couples who are engaging and just not engaging, and it's not related to any of those things, let alone
Mhm.
people who are struggling with other illnesses, people who are struggling with hormone imbalance. And then you have the classic one where couples are dealing with having kids, really young kids,
Yep.
right? Yeah, and they're losing the time. So sex therapy is really very powerful. It connects you back to the body because you have to connect to your body first and then ideally connect back to your partner and share with each other what you like, what you don't like, what is helpful, what gets you in the mood, the fact that intimacy is not just in the bedroom, many things. And then you do the fun things like toys, and this lubrication and this bedroom. And you're entertaining the aspect that sex is actually, it's really fun.
Hmm.
Don't forget that. So we just help guide people to be able to have essentially difficult conversations. Sex therapy means that we're helping people be guided on having difficult conversations about very specific acts or behaviors or needs in somebody's sex life.
Hmm. Again, a topic that probably should be covered in school.
I agree. 1000%. Absolutely. Sex education is actually really vital, really, really vital. I think a lot of us would have been a lot more, what's the word, fluid or natural in how we connect to the opposite sex had we had really sufficient sex education. So,
Mhm.
oh, and also same sex, because, got the couples who are not heterosexual, okay?
Mhm.
Same rules apply.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I didn't realize that there were so many different aspects of, psychotherapy and all those things. So what is your specific focus area? Do you have one that you do more often or one that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, actually. So my specific license is marriage and family therapist.
Hmm.
So I specifically am trained on relationships. It's relationships with couples, with family members. I've had a best friend pair, and then it's also primarily that relationship with self. Really, really powerful, really very necessary. And what I'm trained in as uh, basically a relationship and individual therapist with the license of marriage and family therapist.
Hmm.
I'm specifically trained on the talk therapy part, the ability to talk things out with
Hmm.
clients, ask certain questions, follow the client's language, encourage different possibilities, encourage different outcomes, ask what if questions, not to induce anxiety, just to see a different picture, find the loopholes that somebody's missing in the fact that they actually are already well on their way to a goal, because this works, right? Then we have
Hmm.
to give credit for that. A lot of different things. And we're trained on that talk therapy. The other half of it is really learning how to listen. We have
Mm.
had, I think I had two solid courses just about listening, just listening.
Wow.
Yes. One of them was called micro skills. I love this class because this professor was on point. She just made the book for it. She taught us about the aspect of all the physical behaviors um, and all the natural things we're able to do when we are properly focusing and paying attention to somebody else to let them
Oh.
know that we are properly paying attention. So micro skills is just what you did right now. Ah, yeah. Uh-huh. Right.
You
And
did a
then we're
whole
nodding our
class
head
on
right
that?
now. A whole class, a whole semester. Yes, we did. It was really fun. She made it fun.
Hmm.
Um, there's a gamut of things to do, and we call like when you're going like, uh-huh, yeah, right. They're called introjects. And when you're in that process of learning the actual behaviors or actions that you do, you also learn the reasons behind them. For example, the research behind even a thing as introjects is that when you have couples where someone is talking and the other is not acknowledging through basic responses like interjects, I think there's something I can't remember the actual number, but it was something like that. Those couples are like 20% higher to have communication issues than couples who actually respond and interjects. Even if he or she is over there talking about complete nonsense that you are not understanding. Like, why are we talking about something that happened 10 years ago and it's still bothering you? Have no idea. And you're just at the dish, you're just at the sink washing dishes, right? Sometimes you would just fully not acknowledge it. You don't say anything. But we are trained to teach our clients to do that because it actually does make a difference inside of your entire communication pattern. Simple.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. It
I can
makes a
see that.
difference.
I get frustrated when I don't get those from him because I was like, "You're not listening to me." And he's like, "I am." I was like, "Well, how am I supposed to know that? You're not saying
Correct.
anything."
That is so accurate and on point. I've been there myself. Like, did you hear me? And they're like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to tell me you heard me. I am a therapist, you know. So, it's actually really, it's really powerful. But yes, Brittany, I'm telling you, an entire semester on just listening using micro skills. Fabulous, fabulous. Hmm.
Amazing. I wish we could teach that to toddlers.
It's so funny. But actually, yeah, the books in our field of study would actually tell you that the toddlers are actually always listening. They're always listening and absorbing. Therefore, that's why you have to work on really paying attention to your own actions, behaviors, and words around toddlers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, maybe they're not good at response and being what's the word? Being balanced and calm to things, but yeah, they're always listening apparently.
Yeah, they're really good at ignoring you when you ask them to clean up your toys or their toys.
Absolutely. That's actually really funny. So, yeah, yeah, yeah. And family therapy is a big part of what I do. I actually find it's really interesting. Post COVID, I didn't have as much family therapy. I ended up getting a lot of individual therapy. COVID, it pulled down so many different illusions
Mhm.
about things that seemed important but weren't, and then suddenly COVID made you really be retrospective and look at, okay, what have I made priority in my life? And oh my gosh, that's actually not what matters. Ultimately, what matters the most is, your relationships, things like your health, your values, what's important to you. And so I got a lot of individual therapy because people started first acknowledging that therapy was okay. We were in a
Mhm.
world crisis. Inside of crisis, okay, therapy is apparently more acceptable. And then look at it now. It's burgeoning, and I'm really proud of the world for that. Good job, world. It's just one step closer to having less stigma around therapy.
Mhm.
Um, so that portion, but what also happened is it was just curious that I had less family therapy, but all to say that individual therapy can be just as powerful because you're still operating to change you and you are in the system of a family. So you change
Mhm.
your behavior, actions, things you say, how you say it, like tone, right? We're always talking about tone.
Mhm.
When you change that, it will automatically automatically change the way the entire family operates. So it still works. I call it
Mm,
family therapy for one or couples therapy for one. It still
okay.
works quite well. Yeah.
That
But
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah. So it's really powerful. But family
Mm,
therapy just means that you maybe have an entire family system, more than one person. Couples therapy usually means that there's more than one person, but a pair. And I'm
mhm.
actually getting new modern relationships of 3 and 4, and they're coming in for therapy. So I had to go back to school for that one, but it's very interesting. No judgment, no bias. They come in with the same problems. And then individual therapy is, of course, just for a single person.
That is a lot more than I expected. I'm actually kind of surprised to hear you say that your family therapy numbers dropped after COVID. I would have assumed
Yeah,
that they would have increased due to
increased.
time spent together without being able to leave the house.
I
There were
I I
moments,
was
I tell
surprised
you.
too. Yeah, I think my theory is that we had to spend so much time together unexpectedly at length. I think the individual people who came in for individual therapy, they needed that space to be on their own, to
Mm,
have a little breathing room. So that's my theory. I feel like it's a strong theory. And
hmm
yeah, it worked out because ultimately how you have difficulties or challenges is how you respond to them. So really
hmm
happy and proud of my clients for getting through. Did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked what you were saying about how an individual can come in for therapy and how it can impact, a couple or like a family unit, because I do feel
Hmm.
that that's really important. And, with all of the things that we have going on, everyone was impacted by the pandemic mentally,
Yes.
financially, and all of those things. And I feel like not to like focus in on one segment, but I feel like entrepreneurs probably felt that maybe
Hmm.
a little bit more because we are already a very isolated community in the sense that we usually operate our businesses by ourselves. So we were even more isolated than ever before. And I can imagine that that impacted everyone's mental health in kind of a different capacity. Did you see a lot of, I guess I can't really ask that because that's like client information, but um,
Oh yeah. No, that's
yeah, did
fine
you?
because I'm not going to give you their names and their social security numbers, so it's fine. But yeah, yeah, it it's like an extra layer when you're talking about mental health for entrepreneurs. It's an extra layer, and you nailed it. One of the biggest things is isolation. We're always end up starting up and growing in on our own. It is extremely challenging when you start to do that, and then you recognize that in today's business world, you have to do all the things. It's a lot. It's a lot. So when the world went upside down, of course, it makes sense that it was challenging for entrepreneurs, let alone the worry, the anxiety, the stress of how I'm going to make my dollars when everything seems to have shut down with any ability for spend,
Mhm.
and for me to earn a living and an income. Like I can't imagine the what the actual brick and mortar stores were going through at that point in time. So it's
Mhm.
deep. It's deep, and you have to be able to rely on yourself. That's the only way you grow a business is if you trust that you, at the very core, can handle, can manage, can figure things out, can grow, and move to the next level. Got to take care of you.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And I would like to talk about that a little bit. And then I do have another big question about how entrepreneurs know if they need therapy. But for starters, can you help us redefine self-care? Because I feel like there's a very big media stigma about self-care being bubble baths and wine and like chocolate. And I'm not really a huge fan of any of those things. So what is self-care and how can we help do it in a way that's good for us?
Oh, I love that question. And that's so funny because I love all of those things, which is exactly why it's called self-care because it actually relates to yourself. And I think that's what's been going on because what one person finds as self-care is completely not going to be what the other person finds because they're in different stages of life, they're different ages, they
Mhm.
are in different family systems, let alone, somebody who's working a career aiming to be CEO one day versus somebody who's happy just being, a manager versus somebody who's owning their own business. There's so many mixes and matches, and that's not even people's personalities, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be the people who rage against the machine of self-care being a bubble bath, right? And there's other ones who are going to love it very, very much. But ultimately, to me, self-care is whatever uh, fills you back up, whatever renews you, whatever refreshes you, whatever allows your mental and emotional state to maintain a balance. That's self care to me. Because when you're talking about good mental health, you shouldn't be too low and you also shouldn't be too high. A lot of
Mhm.
people forget that. There's this whole thing about, I just want to be happy. Uh, just happy. Can't you just be happy? Happy, 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 happy. Happy. Very lovely emotion. We're so happy when we feel happy. That's great. But happy is actually a high emotion. It's hard to maintain being there. So
Mm.
I talk to my clients about emotional independence. We already know when you are feeling low, down, and you're going to the points of like feeling really depressed, like so much anxiety that you're shutting down, like panic attacks, things like that. We know that that's too low and you have to build up and be really solid. You have to build up to feeling, less down, less sad, and more, able to handle every day. And then the high is when you're going too fast. You're overthinking too much. Maybe you're experiencing excitement and it's going too high, and you have to bring yourself back down. So low to high in emotional independence is aspects where you're figuring out coping skills that are also self-care. So what's going to help you by the end of the day feel just a little bit less sad, right? And then when you're too high, what can you do by the end of the day that's going to help you balance back to content, calm, peaceful, satisfied?
Mm.
That middle ground right there, to me, in my practice, where I teach my clients, that's the baseline of good mental health.
Okay. I like that.
Mhm.
I've never heard anyone say that you kind of sometimes need to bring yourself back down from that high point, but that makes a lot of sense because it's also an emotionally draining place to be too, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I like that. And you mentioned as well that, happy is a nice state, but it's not the state that we can live in perpetually, which I feel like is
Exactly.
really key because you're right. Everyone keeps striving for this and striving for this, and then they hit it, and then it doesn't stay, and then they feel like they did something wrong.
Right.
And I feel like kind of one of the big things about that is that happiness wouldn't seem as good if it was our constant state of being. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
just kind of one of those things that we experience for shorter periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah.
Yeah, you touch it. You touch it and then you cherish it and then you come back down. Because happy is up here. So it's like getting in the car and gunning it 100 miles an hour. It's gonna burn out the car like that versus 40 miles an hour. So it's
Mm.
just a very high state. So that's why they have things from long into ancient times like breath work. The East Indians brought yoga, uh, and all kinds of things. The Chinese, they have so many aspects of like physical movement. The one we're familiar with the most for relaxation is called Tai Chi.
Mm.
They all come together to bring the body back down and essentially reconnect the mind to the body. And that's where that whole mind
Mm.
body connection has, that's the whole point of why we do those things, we do those activities. So yeah, it's
Okay.
it's very necessary. Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, for self-care, I know you're like, whatever makes you happy and things like that. But I know as a mom, after I became a mom, rather, I felt like I couldn't answer that question when people asked me.
Mm,
They're like, "Oh, what do you do for yourself? What makes you happy?" And I was like, I don't know. Like we live in such a constant state of
yeah.
survival mode, I feel like, when you first have kids, because you lack of sleep and you don't know what you're
Mhm,
doing in all honesty. So
mhm.
how can you, or what would you suggest to help women that are in that state, or even men too, because I know transitions to parenthood is hard on men as well.
Yeah.
Uh, but how would you help people kind of come back to themselves when they're in that state?
Many things. The very first one is I often have to teach clients that they need to recognize their emotions. Like what is actually happening? Can you identify it? Can you put your finger on what you're actually feeling? And, my husband is driving me crazy. The baby won't stop crying. Those are not emotions. Those are just what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel frustrated. I feel exhausted. I feel hopeless right now. Whatever that is, you identify what that emotion is because it's going to help you connect and understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step of that process is just acknowledge it. You don't have to fight the emotion. I think this is absolutely key to good mental health. We have been trained, like don't cry, uh, don't feel sad. And I'm like, and that's the first thing I tell somebody. Like every guy I date, I'm like, we're not going to do that. This is not how we're doing this. you know, no, I will cry if I want to. It is my party. I will cry if I want to. And the reason why it's important not to fight those feelings is because usually there's a reason why you're feeling that way. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to allow yourself to understand that, okay, the baby won't stop crying. This is why I'm so exhausted. I feel frustrated and I'm hopeless right now. This makes sense. It allows you to have another level of peace. You're like, oh my God, I feel so misunderstood right now. This is why I'm so mad at my husband. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so on and so forth. You have to self-validate, but to do that, you have to know your emotion. So that whole process is necessary. And then once, just like I said before, the close of that, what I call the emotion recognition practice is if you're trying to identify three emotions in that moment, regardless if they're up or down, like negative or positive, if it's
Mm-hmm.
up or positive, how by the end of the day do I bring it back down to a balance or maintain that feeling. Like, what, I do feel calm today. So what can you do by the end of the day to maintain the fact that you feel calm? And that's a good state. And then of course it's the opposite with negatives or down
Mm-hmm.
things. I feel incredibly frustrated right now. What can I do by the end of the day? Even a small thing that'll help me feel even just the tiniest bit less frustrated. I'm gonna watch cat memes all day. you know, I'm gonna go get my Starbucks. I'm gonna go for a drive. You know what? I'm gonna tell my husband that I really need to just be held, and he should just not talk during that and just hold me. Whatever it is, just small, small steps can help. And that's just the emotion recognition. That's just one thing. You asked for a couple, right? But
Yeah.
how about that for a
Yeah,
start?
I like that. Okay. I think that that's a
Hmm.
really good piece of advice. And as sad it is as it is to say, I feel like a lot of adults are at about the same stage that toddlers are in learning to identify their emotions. And I
Yes.
speak for myself here too.
Mhm.
There are certain days where I'm just like, and I don't know why.
Mhm.
And it's because I'm not
Mhm.
stopping to do that. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it's
mm,
always important. We are complicated beings. I mean, just our nervous system alone is just this mastered marvel masterpiece of bundles of chemical neurons and hormones, and all of it connects down to our muscles and how we are responding to like seeing a bee in our face. That to me is outstanding.
mhm,
How is that possible? And it's not too much to accept and ask that that entire masterpiece that is your body, your mind, your brain, it just needs to, you know, be understood that it has different states of transition. One of those states of transition are emotions. And it just happens that that's what we feel almost all the time. So you
Hmm.
acknowledge it, don't fight it, and try to address whatever that is. And that's a good start for hopefully having um, more connection to feeling calm, balance, and content.
Hmm. Okay, that's good. So self-care is kind of one of the big pieces that I feel like a lot of people need to maybe take a little bit more seriously. But I feel like a question that we ask ourselves internally a lot, but is not necessarily verbalized, is the title of your podcast. Do I need therapy? And I know this was a
Hmm.
question that I asked myself a lot, and I asked my partner too when we were going through relationship struggles. And we actually just published an episode recently talking about our experience with
I saw.
co-parenting and couples counseling. Yeah, that was really
Mhm.
good. Uh,
Excellent episode.
Thank you. So for those people that are kind of asking themselves this, what do you recommend or what do you look for? I don't even know how to phrase this, but how do people know whether the answer to the question, how do or do I need therapy, is a yes or a no?
Um, well, the very first one I usually say is if you're asking that question, period, just across the board, you may likely need therapy, even if
Okay.
it's just a question that pops in your head. It's possible. It's possible. So, that's my little humorous joke of the first way you can catch it. But other ways is times where you're noticing that you're not coping, meaning that, there's a stressor in your life and you manage, you get through it in an ability that allows you to not be have added stress, not be more stressed to the stressor, and still able to handle your responsibilities. Um, you also notice things that are happening in body if you're just not feeling well. I particularly, whenever I'm not in good mental health, my body tells me. My mind actually doesn't tell me. My body tells me. Um, one example is you during therapy school, there are moments where you have to go really hard. And no, it was never anything about being overwhelmed by clients. It was just everything that was expected of us, papers, practicum, work, and then we have to show up to present a case or an article, whatever it may be. It was a lot. And my hair started falling out. It was like, oh,
Oh.
okay, right. And then another time, my skin, it just wasn't happy. I had like large patches of, I don't know, whatever was going on. Just my body always responded and told me like, okay, we need to slow down now. But other people, it could be the exact opposite. Like their emotions are going haywire. And a lot of times, whenever this happens, my anxiety sufferers, those who are sensitive to anxiety, they often feel it first. And then unfortunately, anxiety sufferers, they also and unfortunately, anxiety sufferers, it seems like they also feel it on both ends, both emotionally as well as physically. And that's very, very challenging. So you're noticing things like not being able to sleep, not being able to feel rested, difficulty with connecting to others, self-isolating behaviors, sadness, of course, anger also pops up in there. So like frustration or irritation, excessive tearfulness, where you constantly feel like you're crying or that you need to cry or want to cry. There's many different things, um, and when you're noticing what those things are, once again, because you've slowed yourself down to stop, acknowledge what you're feeling, you can kind of see when you are okay versus when you are not okay.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that most people have is that they don't admit it, right? They don't admit it. And that's the very first thing that you have to do, just like AA says. What's the first thing you do? Like, accept that you have a problem, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very large process, but the funny thing is that it's so easy to do because it's addressing what you're feeling, maybe talking about it, and then recognizing that this it's not forever. So how do I get help? How do I ask for help? Right? That's when you know that you really need therapy, is when you can't do all these things on your own. You don't see that there is a solution, and just the challenge of difficulty of how do I figure this out? If you can't seem to figure it out, sometimes that means that, we're blocked. So you're having those things, and I know I'm talking a little bit more abstracty, but when you're coming back, okay, great. Because when you're coming back, of course, that would be other things, as well as recognizing if you're in a depression, if you're experiencing anxiety or anxiety attacks, if you're losing the norm of your eating patterns, like if you're eating too much or too little, if you're sleeping too much or too little, if you're not enjoying the same things that previously brought you pleasure, eating, playing a game, going out, sex, if all those things are not hitting, that usually means like a depleted process of, how your brain is firing. So those are like more of the more physical, more specific symptoms of what tells you that you may need to go to therapy. But a lot of times, the clients that find me, the process is actually more internal. It's just, I can't figure out how to feel better by the end of the day. I can't talk to my husband. I can't talk to my wife. And I don't know how to connect with my kids, or my kids are driving me crazy, and I wish I was a better mom. I had that one very recently. We had to work really hard to remind her that so much about herself has changed being a parent, let alone she's a parent of two kids under the age of 4, mind you. I was like, you have
Busy.
stress. Yeah, I was just like, you have special circumstances, my dear. You truly do. So, um, just things like that. And then, of course, with couples, arguing, fighting, feeling disconnected, not being able to understand each other, all kinds of things. So it's legion of the things of that could be necessary of why you need therapy, but only when you've essentially crossed the line, when something is dysfunctional, when something is no longer working, like a relationship, or a goal that you're trying to achieve, whatever that may be, feeling stuck, feeling like you can't control your emotions. And then, of course, the most difficult one, or two, is when you are using substance, alcohol, drugs to, feel better, to feel up, to go down and sleep. When you're doing that excessively, that's another one. And then, of course, the most difficult one is when you feel like harming yourself or somebody else. If you're suicidal, you're understanding that not only do you imagine these different scenarios, but you're actually planning it. You need somebody right away, right away. So it's a lot of different things, and hopefully
Mm.
you are in tune with yourself to being able to check in and just fully just admit, and it's okay that yes, you may need therapy.
I was gonna say, I mean, that is a lot. And I feel like, I mean, obviously I've been to therapy. We just were talking about that, but I feel like there
Mhm.
were a lot of situations in my life previously where I've experienced those things and I just
Mhm.
thought it was normal. And
Yeah,
so it's nice to like
yeah,
have a bit of an eye opener to be like, oh, okay, I probably, could have sought out help and I would have been able to help remedy that situation much earlier with hopefully fewer negative side effects of dealing with whatever that was.
yeah,
One of the
yeah,
things that I started realizing about myself recently is that my body also does tell me when I'm stressed out. I mean,
right.
my brain does too, but it's a constant level of stress right now. Being a new entrepreneur and I have well, 3 under 4 technically, but almost 3 under 3.
Yeah, wow.
And my eye starts
Right.
twitching. I feel
Oh
my eye
yeah,
twitch, and I was like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay, we need to like take a step back here because this is my body's way of saying we just can't handle this right now."
yes. I have the eye twitch too when I get stressed.
Yeah.
Me too. And that's okay. That's okay. Because I love the
Mhm.
body. It tells you, it's like a warning system. It's telling you something is not working, something's not right. Let's get ourselves taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's great that you recognize that and you essentially found your way to help. Excellent. Was it
Mhm.
helpful?
Yeah. I mean, I found therapy super helpful. I wish I had done it sooner. So for those people that are listening and they've maybe self-identified that they have some of this, what do we call them, symptoms? The
Yeah.
the symptoms that you just outlined, what is the next step? How do they go
Mhm.
about, seeking out therapy?
That is a really great question. That is should be simple, should be so easy and simple, but it's not. That
Mhm.
is so unfortunate. So, the idea is that when you realize that you need therapy, you should be able to utilize your insurance or go to what do you have something, you have a system, your health system, right? To being able to connect to a, a doctor's office and being able to let them know, like, maybe I need an annual physical because I'm not really quite right and I may be depressed, whichever. And the doctor is supposed to help you, whether it's your PCP or a general practitioner. And then they would refer you to a psychiatrist, or if they have experience, they'll work with you right there themselves.
Hmm.
And that becomes the beginning, just to know that maybe perhaps you have a diagnosis of depression or generalized anxiety or bipolar or whatever it may be. It
Mhm.
kind of starts around the medical. However, you can also start at the therapy. And that's another thing. Again, you should be able to go to something that you have available, like insurance or a health system, and meet directly with a therapist easily. But the challenge is that connection, that system is completely broken on both sides. And if you are able to make an appointment, sometimes it's weeks, even months in advance.
Mhm.
There's no way that you're able to meet a need immediately, oftentimes. But that's usually the process, and then you would pay accordingly with insurance, get a copay. It's a simple thing. You show up at the office and it's an easy start. But unfortunately, it just isn't like that, which is
Mhm.
why a lot of therapists, at least in the US, don't take insurance, because the insurance comes in as a very difficult middleman and makes everything very much more complicated. So
Mm.
um, I want to give you a really straight answer, but that's hard. The first thing is your insurance, your healthcare system. But the other way is you can ask a friend, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot more of them than you realize are actually in treatment, essentially.
Mhm.
Ask a friend if they know of anybody. Sometimes that goes quicker because then they're in already, like with their therapist. And then they can be and say, you know what, I have a friend, she's interested in therapy. Do you mind if I refer her to you? And because you're there, she's able to, or he is able to see right there on the calendar to fit them in. Sometimes that's a quicker way.
Mhm.
Um, and if you're a student, you should be able to locate student counseling services on campus. Like, you're paying all that money, and student counseling is one of those things you should be able to access. It should be available to you
Mhm.
at any college or university level. So
Right.
go ahead and utilize it. You're paying for it already. Trust, you know. So that's another way. And I always recommend my parents to remember that when their kids are in middle school, help them know that they can always ask the teacher to go to the nurse or the over here we call it the EAP, but there's like a special um, teacher designated to help students who need a little extra attention and care. Tell your high schoolers to go to the guidance counselor. Sometimes they actually do have counselors on site. And when they're in university and college, tell them to go and check out the student counseling. All along that journey, you're adapting your child to being able to recognize that whenever they're feeling a certain way, there's usually a service for them. So find it, ask for help, look out for it, seek it whenever you need it. So that's really, part of the process. But, you can start with a doctor, find a therapist, ask a friend. And the new thing is that there's a lot of therapy available online. And it started out real rocky. Like, is this really therapy? Online therapy? Does this really work? And I specialize in online therapy since 2018. And I still remember my professors who were far esteemed ahead of me looked down their noses and like, what do you mean you specialize in online therapy? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I do. I had to like stand firm. And lo and behold, 2 years later, I was not only, you know, there to state like, yeah, see, I told you. I was like, I'm right. See, the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of platforms out there online that are open to therapists working with them as a cohort, as a collective, and
Mm-hmm.
then they just connect them to people who are looking for the service. There are fabulous therapists out there that are on those sites that are available. They know exactly what they're doing. They're highly trained. Excellent, excellent. And there are other therapists who are not, unfortunately. You know, you go to a
Yep.
new hairstylist, it's like a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that with therapy sometimes. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to know what you need and what you're looking for when you arrive and throughout the process of like the first several sessions to feel out if that therapist is right for you. But any of those options hopefully gives you a little bit more direction of how to find a good therapist and a good service that would be, you know, that would help you get to a good place of that would help you get to a good place of good mental health.
Ah, no, that was really good. I didn't even think about going to my doctor and asking for a doctor referral.
Mhm.
I like did a Google search like probably 3 years ago when we were first starting having relationships problems, and I looked at a few websites and I just felt so overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do. And at the time he was against therapy, so we didn't end up
Mhm.
doing it. But when we finally did go to do it this time, I kind of had like a mutual acquaintance that I was talking to, and they recommended somewhere for me to go and look. So we've actually never
Wonderful.
met our therapist in person either. It's all been virtual therapy through InnerWorks. So if anyone's
Great.
listening to this and they're local, I don't know what InnerWorks' coverage area is, but if you want, I'm happy to refer you to the lady that we've been seeing, and we did it through the InnerWorks kind of counseling company. So there are a lot of other ways to do it, but yeah, just if the noise of not being sure how to find a good therapist is what's stopping you from going to therapy, then I am here to help you try and figure that out. Not that I am an expert, but I have seen such great benefit from it that I would love to kind
Mhm.
of share my knowledge. And I'm sure, April, you would be more than happy if people had questions out to you about that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a whole service that is dedicated so I can just one-on-one, they can ask
Mm.
me questions. It's just my discovery call. I hone in very specifically on you and what you need. So you just we start out by just introducing each other, like, hi, who are you? Who are you? You need that a lot when you have a good therapist, and just introductions, and then sharing with you why you're needing therapy, and essentially I can be a good listening ear, and I can let you know if that's ideal for you or not. Normally it is because normally it's like interpersonal problems, challenges with
Mhm.
anxiety, depression, or stress, and when you're doing that all together, it's important to be able to just like just feel out, excuse me, just feel out the fit
Mhm.
essentially. So it's my discovery call, and I actually created a discount code for your
Mm.
whole audience. Yes.
Okay. It is GG Great 2023. I'm just looking at it now. I'll put it in the show notes though for anyone that
Yeah.
wants to use it for sure. And I think that that's really important, making sure that you're finding the therapist that's the right fit for you. Because if you don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable opening up and being vulnerable with that person, you're probably not getting the most out of therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's different caveats to it, but you have to feel out the good fit. So one of them that I always try to recognize is, or and guide people with, is the fact that when you first start therapy or even restart therapy, sometimes it's just going to be a little uncomfortable. It may be uncomfortable. So you kind of
Mhm.
have to sift through and understand, okay, is it my discomfort or is this just not a good fit? Uh, and and kind of moving through it in that way. But at least with discovery call, what I do is I'm making sure that I can answer all of the questions because there's so many questions about just therapy. Like, how does it work? What do you need? Where do I start? What do I ask for? All those things. So that's what that's there for. But I don't know of any other therapist that does it quite like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure many other therapists, they have discovery calls in a different fashion or free consultations. And you can look for those too by
Mm-hmm.
almighty Google. Google is good stuff. So you can
Yes.
find a lot still online. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Okay, that's really good. So we had
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to circle back in case you had something else to share. But what are some of your self-care practices, or what do you do to pump yourself up on a bad day?
Ooh, oh, I got so many things. I have a list. I have a list. Another thing about self-care is that a lot of people have an incomplete list of the things, the coping skills that they need. I talk to my clients almost like a kindergartner. I'm like, how many fingers and toes do you have? And that's how many we need, how many coping skills we actually need.
Hmm.
So how many do we have? Okay, one, two, three, four, not quite four. So, like I walk. Yes. So having a complete list means that you want to extend how many coping skills that you have. And it depends on what you need that particular day, for sure. But having different varieties of what works for you is really helpful, as well as the habitual things, the things that are like go-tos. For me, I'm I I really wish I could change this, but Netflix got me ages ago. I am a goner. So I love Netflix because I love stories and storytelling. And
Mhm.
those streaming platforms, they know how to do it.
Yep.
So lost many a day on Netflix, So I love that. I greatly enjoy puzzles. I wish
Oh.
I had a big, gigantic table and I could do like the puzzles in person, but because I travel so much, I just have one on my tablet. It is
Mhm.
the bomb diggity. I just can just relax and release and just mindfully do stuff. I also like solitaire and
Okay.
memory games. So things that like exercise my brain,
Mhm.
digital, because I'm very digital. I love that stuff. I walk almost every single day of my life. I need that walk. Starts out with my morning walk. It is vital to me, so necessary just to be at the base of moving my body. So whenever I just need a breather or just a moment or just to talk to God and pray or call a friend,
Mhm.
I go for a walk. And I specifically do that so that when I'm walking, it's not just for exercise, it's productive.
Mm.
And it helps me even elongate the walk. So sometimes I'm calling a friend that I haven't talked to in a very long time. So a 15-minute walk is next thing you know, it's 45 minutes, which is really good for my body. If I
Mhm.
have the time, and it's just a little bit of extra way to stay engaged and connected to the exercise and yet be able to disconnect because you're doing something else. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Mhm.
that's how I relate. I'm a big walker. I love to read music, music. That's what I was saying earlier. I love Afro beats. After my travels, I landed on the continent of Africa, my homeland, my ancestors. For the first time, it is absolutely just like so spiritual inside
Mhm.
of that process. And I got to travel from Southern Africa, like starting in South Africa out to East Africa. I went to Nairobi and all the way up to Dakar, Senegal. And
Mhm.
that process also was taught me about the culture of there's so many different African nations. They all have their own tribes, their own tribal languages, their own cultures, their own food, everything. So one of the things they also have their own of many different sorts is their music and on point. So Afro beats is one of my absolute favorites. You can literally go to Spotify, Pandora, uh, what's the other one? I forgot the other one, but just go and type in Afro beats. YouTube also too, Afro beats 2023. and I will be jamming on that all day, all day. Um, and my biggest thing, I can go on and on because I literally have a very vast amount of self-care things at work, including the bubble bath. Don't forget the
Mm.
bubble bath.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. I also really, really love to dance.
Mm.
Love to dance. No, not on a pole, even though I totally respect those pole dancing women. Like, wow,
I don't do
you
it
know?
regularly, but I've done it before and it is a hardcore workout, let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That is awesome. I am in awe when I see those women. Wow. I don't know if I'll ever be that, but who knows?
It's
Never
just
say
like
never.
go out and try it once. It would just be fun to
Yeah,
do. Hmm.
yeah, you're absolutely right. So next time I see something in my vicinity and close by, I will check it out. You're absolutely right.
Hmm.
But I actually love to dance. I love to ballroom dance, Latin dance, and
Oh.
now I've learned Afro dances as well.
Mhm.
So it's really weird. Nobody really knows. I've never posted it. I don't really share it a lot, but I am like a walking Dancing with the Stars. I got my rumba, my bachata, my salsa, my tango, my waltz. I know
Wow.
merengues, and now coming from Africa, I also know samba. I know cumbia from South America, from Brazil,
Huh?
and I also learned kizomba, which is my absolute favorite. It's just a
Huh.
very fun, funky tango, essentially. It's the origin of tango, actually, kizomba.
Okay.
So I did a Groupon one day, like 8 years ago, and I was just like the pole dancing, like if it's in
Mhm.
your vicinity, just try it.
Yeah.
And I just tried it. I just went, and it also helps and relates to my culture because I'm actually Caribbean and
Mhm.
I grew up mostly in Miami. So there's a lot of Hispanic culture. So I also speak Spanish. And salsa is just also kind of mandatory in Miami, as well as speaking Spanish. So it was close to me already. And I figured I'm here. I need to learn this.
Mhm.
I just walked in one day and I got so lucky because not only was this instructor amazing in my backyard, he
Mhm.
was one of the top in the southeast because a lot of times they're separated in regions.
Mhm.
But he just took to me. I don't know what it was. I don't know what I was wearing. I don't know if it was my perfume. I don't know what it was, but I'm so grateful. And it wasn't like creepy or anything. There was no romantic tones. He just saw a talent, something in me. And when the class was done, he's like, "So I'll see you tomorrow at 6." I said, "Oh, okay." And then I came back the next day and he's like, "I'll see you tomorrow at 6." And I was like, "Oh, okay then. All right." And then he's like, "Okay, you're going to come back on Monday for 6 o'clock and the 7 o'clock class." All right. Okay. All right. And then you're going to need to do private lessons because you need to work on A, B, C, and D. And then he'd go into the private lessons and he breaks you down. And then he's like, "Okay, you also need to go to the Saturday workshop at 12." And I was just like, holy cow. I was in there every day training for minimum of 3 hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours,
Wow.
depending on what was going on for 3 years. It
Crazy.
was incredible. Yeah, yeah. So it's a huge passion for me. It's my ultimate joy that I always like level back at. I always work hard to level
Right.
back. But it's the thing that makes me the absolute most happy besides love.
Mhm.
I love to dance. Love to dance. And Kazamba combines my favorite new genre, like reggae will always be my favorite, of course, but Afro beats with Kazamba, and I am elated, happy, and everything is fixed, you know. So I encourage people to find what that thing is, that
Mhm.
it thing. It can be art, it can be writing, it could be training. I have a client, she trains puppies like from very young age, and she
Mhm.
talks about it like a little kid. It's what makes her happy, you know?
Yeah.
And I have another client, she just raises bamboo trees. Who knew, right? That's all. She just grows different kinds of bamboo trees. She
Mhm.
loves green stuff and she has her own nursery. She just followed her passion. And when I'm
Mhm.
around other dancers, other people who like get it, like, what do you mean you're going to a workshop on Saturday at 12 for the whole day? I don't understand. Like, Saturday is a day for rest and to chill out and be in front of the TV. What
No.
do you mean you're spending $120 for this workshop that's only like 2 hours with who is this? What do you mean you're traveling across the world to go to that dance conference? you know, but other dancers, they understand. So also finding your community really helps a lot too. I can talk about this all day. I'm gonna bring that, rein it in.
No, I love it. I'm actually I would love to call myself an avid dancer, but I actually have not been able to dance much in the last 3 years, being pregnant and all.
Yeah, I
But
imagine.
I
Okay.
100% get it. And you're talking about being in the studio for 3 hours a day, and I was like, oh, pangs of envy over here. I would love that. I miss the studio so bad.
Oh,
Um,
do you?
Fun
Okay, yeah.
thought, or
Hmm.
just a fun thing for you to note. Tomorrow is actually International Dance Day. So you should like post on social media if you do that, like a dance video, do like a throwback. That would be so fun.
You are so right. I have so many. It just lives on my phone. It's crazy. I don't talk about it, but I feel like this is the year that I'm going to talk about it. So thank you. That's a wonderful idea.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Wonderful idea.
Okay. I want to ask one more question before we wrap up. So, you had listed a few of your recent travel destinations, but I'm curious
Oh
where your favorite place to travel is.
my gosh, that's so hard. That is so hard, Brittany. It's like asking what's your favorite food. I'm like, today? What's my favorite food today?
Yep.
Right? Like today's ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream to be specific, with
There you
crumbles of
go.
Oreos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've traveled to a lot of places on the Western Hemisphere. I haven't reached the Eastern Hemisphere yet, but
Mm-hmm.
on the West side, I've been extremely fortunate and blessed to have gone from like Lima, Peru to Medellin and Cartagena in Colombia and Mexico City. And I had a stint in Guatemala in a city called Antigua,
Oh.
and I jump over and I can go to Lisbon and Madrid and Amsterdam. But when I hit the continent, I cannot tell you how deep that was for me. And I landed in Cape Town and I was like, oh my God, this place is great. Wow, it's so beautiful. Nelson Mandela, I can feel you in the air. I love it here. Cape Town is completely, almost entirely coastlined by the ocean. And
Okay.
it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful place that's uh, it's also framed by a huge mountain called Tabletop Mountain. So it's this weird combination of this ginormous earthen mountain and then the
Mhm.
beach. You're just like, okay, that's weird and random, but it just works. It's very cool. It's beautiful, lots of culture.
Yeah.
Um, and you're seeing how the city has worked really hard to move past the days of apartheid. There's a lot of history that you can really check out and engage in. And the food, oh my gosh, the food, because there's a lot of like East Indians and Asians, and they brought their food to Cape Town. You can
Uh,
get anything you want. Oh my gosh, the food. As well as just the African food as well. It's so good because Cape Town is this mixing pot of like every culture in the world. It's like New York
mhm.
City.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, loved it there, but as much as I loved it there, I went to Nairobi and I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. The city, the earthen, like the mud, the dirt is like just like in the movies, like in Wakanda. A lot of it was filmed throughout East Africa and I
Oh,
think in Kenya. And what's really unique about that area is the earth. It's this bright red orange clay. When you
hmm.
get there, you're just like, wow, it's for real. And I don't know why that moves me so much, but I loved being there. And these people know how to dance like nobody's business. Yes, there is salsa and bachata and kazomba and merengue in Nairobi, Kenya.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Loved it there. And then I was like, I'm coming back. And then I went to Dakar and I was like, all right, I love it here too. And Dakar, Dakar took my heart. Dakar is in Senegal. It's way up in the north of Africa, but it's on West Africa. It's a West African
Okay.
country. And Dakar is the capital of Senegal. And when I got to Senegal, I don't know how this serendipity happened, but I happened to be in Senegal, in Dakar during World Cup when Senegal was the last African uh, country to be
Uh,
in the competition. The
yeah.
city was crazy. The whole country was just insane just to be a part of that joy and excitement and like anticipation. And it was just it was amazing to be there, right
Mm.
there for it. So I still cheered for US, but being in Senegal, I was like, okay, host country. But Dakar
Yeah.
is right on the coastline coast. It's amazing sunshine because it's in sub-Saharan Africa. So
Mm.
sun, heat, warmth, and then the entire length of Dakar is basically coastline. So the beaches
Oh.
are outstanding, and then you have the Atlantic Ocean that create waves.
Mhm.
So the water there is really special, and you have this massive amount of people who love water sports. And Dakar is known for their surfers. And
Mm.
there's it's not really a thing that people realize that there are Black surfers out there in the world. These guys kill it, kill it. You should see them. It's outstanding. And then those surfers who are like pros and professionals, they come from all around the world to be trained by these surfers, native Senegalese surfers that teach in Dakar. It's amazing.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful city. My favorite part is a monument called the African Renaissance Monument, which is this man holding up his child in one arm, and in the other arm, he's got his arms around his wife. It's this
Aw.
huge statue, like the Statue of Liberty. It's high above the city. And every time I passed it, I was just so moved. So that and the culture and the people are beautiful, tall, dark skinned, gorgeous people, women, fashion, like nobody's business in these
Oh.
African garbs and, you know, makeup and the hair and the accessories, beautiful culture. And it's just an incredible Muslim country. I was also there for Ramadan. I'm
Mm.
talking a lot. It was just beautiful. It was wonderful. So I highly recommend Dakar. And you have to learn French. That's the one thing. So Canadians, I know you
Uh,
guys got that on lock. Some of you guys do, but that was hard for me. But I did. I picked up some, and it was a lovely city. So I have to think. I think it was Dakar. Yes, it
yeah.
was Dakar. Yeah, it kept me.
Okay.
Hmm.
I've never even heard of Dakar before, and now I want to go.
You have to go. It's stunning. People just don't realize how uh how special it is. It's very aligned to Caribbean culture actually
Mm,
because of the
okay.
sun and the water and the beaches. Really, really lovely culture and really friendly. And they also got the French in there too. So you think that that's all you need, but then you pop in that they have these bakeries all over the country that has
Mhm.
the best French bread, the best French pastries
Mm,
of, oh my gosh, just, don't get all fat and swollen over there, but it's completely possible. So it's a really good
okay.
spot. I landed there. I was going to be there for a month and I ended up staying 5. So I think
Oh,
that was
wow.
it. Yeah. It was interesting and beautiful experience, but happy to be back and then I'll go
Amazing.
again. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. It's like after, 2 or 3 years of, well, I mean, a little bit more like 3.5, almost 4 years for me of not really traveling much because of pregnancy and
Hmm.
pandemics and all that
Sure,
stuff. I
sure.
was like, I really want to go places this year. So I'm asking where your favorite places to travel are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Travel clearly is one of my absolute ultimate self-cares, alongside dancing.
Mhm.
Um, I recommend it. The thing is that if that's you where you haven't been able to get out or you don't know how to get out or you literally can't get out because you're raising a young family, right?
Mhm.
These places are not going anywhere. They're
Mhm.
going to be there for whenever you're ready, whenever it's the right time for you. I
Mhm.
promise they will still be there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, put Dakar on your list, Cape Town on your list, but even just, you know, I don't know, let me say Kingston, Jamaica, which is, my family's place.
Yeah,
Heading
I
over to
think I've been
Montego
there.
Bay, Negril. Have you? my
Yeah,
goodness.
my parents took us on a couple of cruises when I was in high school. So I know we went to Jamaica. I think we went to Kingston, but it could have been
Oh,
somewhere else in Jamaica, but
it may have been Montego Bay.
lovely.
I'm so glad you liked it. Kingston is the city, and usually when there's cruises, they come through to Montego Bay, which has a really
Okay.
nice resort area, and
Mhm.
it's lovely, lovely, lovely. So I'm so glad you went. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, definitely check that out too.
Cruises would be great, but I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like my kids would try and jump overboard.
Oh my gosh, they actually specialize in that. Trust me, I've been on, no, actually, I've only been on one cruise. Hmm. But my cousins are cruise masters. They go
Yeah.
every single year, and they've gone with when their kids were really little to now they're, adults and teenagers. And one of the reasons why they chose cruises was because there was so many safeguards for kids, but there's also a lot of people around helping to watch the kids, and then there's
Mhm.
also a lot of activities for kids. So
True.
yeah, you're good on a cruise. I think you can handle it. Brittany, you are Brittany. You can absolutely handle it.
Thank you. All right. Well, I just want to wrap up and say thank you so much for being here today. And there's one more thing that I wanted you to mention, if you don't mind. I know you said that you have a Keep Depression Away checklist that people can
Yeah.
access. Did you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. During my journey I forgot to mention, I traveled to 12 countries in 12 months. I worked really hard to do an actual remote year and I was successful. I actually did 13 months. But along that way, as incredible as it was, there was some hard moments. There were some tough days. And even as a therapist, I still feel it. Even as a therapist, I still have my mental health sensitivities. Mine in particular is depression. So when I feel lost or lonely or stuck or not knowing which way to go, depression is what takes me over. I have to work really hard to always be aware of where that is. How deep is it? How far away is it? How do I need to take care of it and,
Mhm.
tend to myself? So I created this checklist along the way, and I just kind of added small things that you can do by the end of the day, with a nice little structured checklist to just go down the list. So I created that for myself, for me, people, me being a therapist with a therapist, also struggling with depression. I'm exactly like you as well. And it's okay. So I created this checklist to get me through those tough moments because they did
Mhm.
happen. And then later, I was able to create it into a full resource, and it's actually the most popular one. So
Wow.
it's just there for you to download. You can just head out to my site. It's aprileandelle.com, just my name.com. And oh, actually, you can do KDA, aprileandelle.com/KDA. It's right
Mhm.
now on the homepage, but you can check it out that way too. And it's always available, really quick one pager. You just print it out or put it on your digital tablet or anything, and just, small steps, simple things that you can do to help keep depression away, keep it at
Mhm.
bay, and, enjoy the balance for the longer run.
I love it. And I will put the link for that in the show notes as well so that you guys can access it easily if you'd like to. So, once again, April, thank you so much for being here today and having such a candid conversation with us about, your struggles and your story and, some really amazing tips and tricks for entrepreneurs to kind of help us figure out what self-care is and kind of put that into practice and identify whether or not we need therapy. And the answer to that is probably yes for
Probably
everybody.
yes.
Yeah, entrepreneurs definitely experience many of those. And if you're a mom and an entrepreneur, you can probably tick about
Double.
50% of those
Exactly.
boxes. So, yeah. So it was
Hmm.
absolutely fantastic having you on today. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. And well wishes to you and to your audience. Every single one of you are beautiful. Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Go Get Great. I hope you found some useful tips and tricks that can help you make life and business work together. If what I said resonates with you, please share it on social media and don't forget to tag at Brittany Miller's socials so that I can celebrate you for taking those first steps towards achieving greatness. Remember, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication, hard work, and a lot of spirit. So don't be afraid to dream big and go after what you want. Keep keep striving for greatness. You get closer with every step forward, no matter how small they may seem. Until next time, go get great.